Welcome back to Behind the Caution Tape. I'm your host, CrashLit. A lot to talk about with USC Athletics last week, a lot coming up this week. Let's get into all of it right now. But before we do, be sure to follow me on social media at CrashLit and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or any of the other services. We should be on all of them. You can also watch the video version of this podcast on my YouTube page. So subscribe to me there at CrashLit. And also be sure to use the promo code Newport50 to get your swag Newport merch, especially if it's SC colors. If you're an SC fan, at checkout for 10% off. So let's get into everything right now. And let's start with the football game, which saw USC win 38-17 over Northwestern. There's definitely obviously, looked a little rough in the first half, especially with USC's defense kind of getting a bit sliced up by the Wildcats. But a lot of credit, they really pulled it together in the second half. And then the two big plays that I think defined that game were the the fake punt, which is now the fake punt where Sam Heward was wearing number 80 instead of his usual number 7 that's been being submitted to teams on game day for 3 weeks now, apparently, even though online, and I checked it yesterday, it still says he's number 7. So that fake punt, which now the Big Ten is saying is illegal, which I'm not really getting. It's like, I mean, maybe he was just trying to be diplomatic but David Braun said, hey, like, they legally submitted that as he was on the roster. And I mean, I guess this is a chance. And obviously, I guess it did play to USC's advantage that they don't have last names on the jerseys. Obviously, that is more for tradition than for, the sneak play. But I definitely think it was really good use. And besides, there's nothing that says, like, how far does a quarterback have to be? Like, you can do, I guess, what, a massively long shotgun? So I think it's kind of dumb that the Big Ten's coming out saying this, but obviously I'm not a full rules expert. But it seems like pretty much from my understanding that Northwestern acknowledged that USC was in their legal right to do it. Then the other big play that defined the game that really I think helped flip the momentum was Jaden Mayava threw an interception, but then managed to tackle the guy who caught it, and he fumbled it through the end zone for a USC touchback. So huge play there that I think really flipped the momentum of the game. But other than that, I thought Mayava had a great game, 299 passing yards, 24 for 33 in the air, threw for 2 touchdowns. King Miller having 127 yards on 15 carries, scored a touchdown. And then Mekhi Lemon, 161 receiving yards, 11 receptions on 1 touchdown. So really impressed with just how this team played, especially in the second half. I think obviously, I mean, Northwestern isn't quite at the level of, teams USC has been playing over recent weeks, but still impressed with how they just rebounded in that game. So impressive there. But yeah, also one thing I did want to mention, yeah, also it was a really cool game, especially being Parents Weekend. My parents came up. Shout out to Mike Amaya and USC Athletics for giving me and my family field passes. We had a great time before the game with that. So just being down there and getting, be super close for warm-ups and all that and getting to, talk with a lot of people, which was really cool, especially getting to talk with Cody Kessler for a minute, who I worked with last year, as well as my former boss in USC Athletics, Keely Orr. So, and then the other thing I did want to mention was thank you to Robert Griffin III for the talking about me and my caution tape, saying you throw a caution tape to the wind. My phone like blew up at halftime. So that was kind of a cool moment just to, I guess kind of just get serious airtime like that. So, but pretty fun. But yeah. So with all that, USC has now moved up to number 17 in the AP poll, 18 in the coaches poll, and I think they should move up in the CFP committee's rankings tomorrow night. So the USC is now 7-2 overall, 5-1, and still in the hunt for a college football playoff spot. Obviously, they cannot lose again, but I think they got a chance. They host Iowa on Saturday. That'll be at 12:30 p.m. on Big Ten Network. The Hawkeyes are 6-3 overall, 4-2 in conference play. Got eliminated themselves last week when they lost to Oregon at home on a field goal in the less than a minute with less than with less than 15 seconds to play. So USC is going to need to play better than it did against the Wildcats, especially given Iowa, I think, is a good team, especially Kirk Ferentz has been known for his defenses there, and they're still able to, win games even just with the offensive play not being at where I think they were hoping it would be. The Oregon game on November 22nd, the kickoff time won't be announced until Sundays. TV networks opting to utilize the 6-day window before using that one. I think especially considering the implications of what happens. Does Oregon somehow drop to Minnesota this week? What if USC loses? I mean, because if both teams are going into this game 9-2, it's essentially an elimination game, considering that really it's like if you're in the Big Ten, you can't have more than two losses and make it as an at-large. The only way you can get in with more than two losses is if you win your conference tournament, win your conference championship, or at least make it to the final. Even that's a stretch, and it seems like right now Ohio State and Indiana should finish out running the table, be 12-0, and should probably be playing each other in Indianapolis in just under a month. But yeah, a bit of other news I did want to bring up. There have been some stuff that Josh Pate has been saying about will Lincoln Riley leave USC on his show on a show a couple weeks ago. Just really just at the end, Pate just kind of just dropped a tidbit that obviously was just like to get people talking, and I mean, it clearly worked. He just said, "Keep an eye on Lincoln Riley at USC." And my co-host at the Voice of College Football, Ethan Inman, he said this on our post-game show on Saturday morning, which you should go and watch. He did a great job writing for Trojans Wire in addition to his duties with USC and the Voice of College Football. He just said that it's not a great look because you just say this, you don't cite any sources, and you're just saying like, what does it even mean? I get obviously, what you want to protect your sources and, not expose anyone. And as someone who's, worked, interned for USC Athletics and, is working as a reporter and journalist and podcaster, I do get obviously, the importance of building relationships. Sports, the one thing I've been told throughout my career is that you can't afford to burn bridges. You just never know what connection someone might have that could help you out at some point in your career. So I get obviously he wants to protect his sources, but could you at least acknowledge like that you had sources, not just say, oh, just as he just said, keep an eye on Lincoln Riley at USC, like, and then he doesn't even specify what it is. Is Lincoln Riley due for a contract extension? Or is he going to leave? Like, what is going to happen here? I mean, because I think Lincoln Riley, was really smart. He said, you know what, I sacrificed to be here. Obviously, that doesn't mean anything. Coaches say, oh, I'm never leaving. I mean, hell, Tommy Tuberville. Yeah, carry me out of here in a pine box at Ole Miss and then skips town not even about a week later for Auburn. So it's not like you can always just, I think it was smart that he said that, just tried to shut it down, even though it doesn't really mean anything. But also, I think for him, does it even make sense to leave USC? I mean, right now he's got a good thing at USC. Would teams even want to pay him more than he's already being paid about 10, 11 million? Especially with, he's had two lackluster seasons. Obviously had the great first year at USC, but then since then he's, trying to still build this program back up. And it's obviously he's got a lot of momentum. He'd be walking away from the #1 recruiting class next season, which obviously I think is huge, especially if, USC keeps winning. A lot of those guys will have a reason to stay. And then also the other thing is you look at some of the jobs that just have been opened up. I mean, Billy Napier, Hugh Freeze, I get those. Those guys couldn't really get anything going. But James Franklin at Penn State had a good thing going. Yeah, he couldn't win the big games, but he'd been there such a long time. And yeah, this year kind of fell apart, but Penn State was generally in a good position. Same thing with LSU. Brian Kelly has had a slightly better record than Lincoln Riley. They played roughly the same amount of games, and Brian Kelly got the boot at LSU. He was 34-13 in 3+ years. So does Lincoln Riley, even if it is more money, does he want to go somewhere? I mean, well, there's the whole buyout thing, but that's not. But really, just in terms of if you're a coach and you want to, actually coach and win games and not get fired, even if, the bag is nice, you just get paid not to work. I still think that, yeah, he could go to LSU and have roughly the same success that he's having at USC, or maybe even, or just do just as well as Brian Kelly did and get fired. Yeah, this year is starting to fall apart for LSU, but it's just it just shows that are you better off? Sometimes, yeah, the grass isn't always greener. So I'm really interested to see how this coaching carousel goes. But I just definitely want to bring that up because especially Riley got asked about it directly in his press conference after the game. So I don't think Lincoln Riley will leave USC, and right now I'm really happy with the job he's doing right now. Especially he's got USC in the playoff hunt. They've already hit last year's win count, and I think they got at least 2 wins, and they should beat. I think they got a chance. They should be able to beat Iowa and UCLA. That Oregon game will definitely be a tough one, but if they can win out, they are gonna have a shot at the playoffs. So, do you really want to leave that? And then, so it's gonna be really interesting to see. But one thing that is for certain this year, which is all these crazy coaching vacancies, especially Florida, LSU, Auburn, just and all the other ones too, Penn State as well, I should mention, is it's gonna be a crazy coaching carousel. That is all I think. That is, I think, the one thing we can all agree. We can all argue who's going to leave, who's staying, who's speaking out both sides of their mouths, who's actually like, doesn't want to leave the situation they're in now. But we all know this one thing I think we all can agree on is this coaching carousel will be absolutely crazy. And it's going to be entertaining to watch. One other thing I did want to talk about just with regards to football, but also just the Big Ten in general, was some reporting, Ryan, that Ross Dellinger did that I read about. It was about the Big Ten private capital deal with the UC Investments, which sounds like the 16 schools that aren't Michigan and USC are trying to find a way to get this thing going and keep the deal alive. And they're trying to find a way to vote it through without USC and Michigan, which I think, especially if you just look at the brand power and influence of those two universities, I think do you really want to not move forward with them? It doesn't seem like a smart move. Obviously, I don't know all of it, but just from what I understand and from what I've read, this just doesn't seem like a really smart play just to do this private capital deal, especially because I've read, I think John Wilner said it in one of his pieces that a lot of colleges they don't have a revenue problem. What one source told John Wilner was that the schools don't have a revenue problem, they have an expenses problem. They just keep building new facilities and all stuff. And I'm not saying they can't, but just I don't think from what I've read and how I understand it, and obviously I don't know as much as I obviously don't know all the details and all that. I'll acknowledge that, but it just seems like it's not gonna solve schools' problems. I think people are saying like trying to take out a loan to pay off a credit card, I think is one comparison. So just wanted to bring that information to you before we move into basketball. So let's move into men's basketball here. And we'll start with, since I was there, and a big thank you before I get into it. Thank you to Woohoo Sue for bringing me courtside for both games this week and taking me into the Founders Club. I had a great time just sitting with you as always and just always getting to sit with another really passionate USC supporter. So is always really fun, especially when you're that close to the action. So USC got started out the season winning 94-64 against Cal Poly on Monday night. Jacob Kofi led the Trojans with 23 points, also led with 10 rebounds, and Rodney Rice led with 8 assists. So first half was a little tighter than I think USC fans were hoping. But USC really just pulled it together and dominated the second half, which is really impressive to see. They were a little streaky in the first half, allowed Cal Poly to play with them, but then just took off in the second half, which is really what you want to see against an opponent of Cal Poly's caliber. But then the next day, but then on Sunday, USC won 114-83 against Manhattan. And Chad Baker-Mazara led USC with a career-high 26 points. Kofi led with 10 rebounds, and Kofi also led with 5 assists. Baker-Mazara was great, and the first half was a little bit close it was close for like maybe half of it, so about a quarter of the game. It was close as Manhattan played really scrappy and aggressive. Then USC just pulled away and then just kept command and scored their most points since 19 since 1998, which was really, really impressive to see. Yeah, 1998. And then obviously, while this is a new look team again, and I have made this point about why I was still more confident, is that they look better than last year. That's just even just now that I've seen this team play twice in person, is they just look better. They're just bigger guys, much more physical, much more aggressive. Like, yeah, it's another overhaul of the roster. You only got one scholarship returner in Terrence Williams II. But I think this team just has more promise, is what I was talking with other fans after the game. And that I think a big part of that is because Musselman, Eric Musselman, the head coach, is now able to actually, he's been here. He wasn't just hired late and just thrown into basically just realizing, shoot, I got to put a roster together. He's actually able to, intentionally look at who is in the portal, who's out there, who's available, who can I get that's going to be the right fit here for USC and help elevate the program. And I think he's done a terrific job, especially in finding those pieces. Like, especially you look at Rodney Rice from Maryland, Ezra Alzar from Utah, Chad Baker-Mazara from Auburn. So just all those guys, I think, yeah, it's a new look roster again, but they're playing really well with each other, and I really like just the the product that I'm seeing on the court. So really excited for that. So yeah, USC's now started the year 2-0. They got a big game, exciting game coming up on Friday when they'll face the 1-1 Illinois State Redbirds at the Intuit Dome as part of the Hall of Fame series in LA. They'll be on 4:30 p.m. at Peacock, and I think it's really cool. I'm actually super excited to be going. I'm going with my dad on Friday because we both have never been to Intuit Dome but have heard a lot about it and just how cool it is. So really just opportunity to see that I think is super cool, especially considering I sort of got to see a bit of what some of like the logic of how Steve Ballmer's vision for it was, especially because when I was interning at Fox 11 in the summer of 2024, my boss, Kyle Kraska, got a full on like tour, like behind the scenes, all that with Ballmer's right hand woman, Gillian Zucker. So just to kind of just see what, obviously Kyle told the office, told the station when he came back from reporting on it, as well as just watching the video and his interview with Zucker, to also just everything I've heard from just seeing games there and all that. It looks super cool. Even as a Lakers fan, I got to tip my cap or maybe my caution tape to Steve Ballmer on that. But at the same time, I still want to see it. So with USC going there, I think it's really great, cool opportunity to go check it out. So excited for it. And I think Illinois State should be a good opponent. Redbirds started out are 1-1, like I said, but they won the CBI last year. So I think it'll definitely be another good matchup for USC to really get comfortable and just continue to gel and like really build really good chemistry. So move on to women's basketball now, who also started the year out 2-0. They were the preseason number 18 team in the AP poll and got a win on Tuesday night, 87 to 48, 87 to 84, 87 to 48, pardon me, against New Mexico State. And with London Jones leading the way with 16 points, Gerda Ralusait, I should have pronounced, leading with 9 rebounds, and Jazzy Davidson leading with 4 assists. So USC just beat down the Aggies just over the course of the game, and I think it was really just impressive to see how they looked. But then USC's big win, especially considering that this year they don't have Juju Watkins, them beating then number 9 NC State 69 to 68 in Charlotte at the Alley tip-off yesterday morning. I got to catch the fourth quarter from the Founders Club at Galen as just before the game. So that was really great to watch that. Davidson led with 21 points. Kennedy Smith led with 8 rebounds. Davidson also led with 4 assists. So USC was behind most of the game and was down 8 points after 3 quarters, and it was looking like trouble for the Trojans, especially when you factor in they'll have Juju Watkins. And what Wes Moore has been building at NC State, especially over the last few years, has been nothing short of impressive, and it's been real. So when I saw that USC had agreed to a matchup with NC State, I knew the Trojans were going to be in for a battle. Especially, I mean, was Watkins going to play? What was her status going to be? Obviously, she then announced she'd be out for the whole season. But even before that, you knew you weren't going to have Watkins. But just it was really impressive just to see USC dig deep in the fourth quarter and rally furiously with Davidson scoring the winning bucket with 8.2 seconds left in the game. And then USC's defense shutting down the Wolfpack on their final possession, even forcing them to call a time out because they couldn't inbound. So just and then suffocating the Wolfpack once they finally did. And then Juju Watkins was super supportive on the bench. And a few things that stood out to me from really watching this game and then the end of the New Mexico State game a little bit, but especially this game now that you really able to see the whole team was Jazzy Davidson looks really good. I really like how she plays. I think she fits well with this team, and I'm really excited to see her continue to grow and develop as a player. So I think it's going to be super exciting to see her play, especially for the first time this weekend when I go watch them against South Carolina. But then also just this team is so good defensively. And especially I think that a lot of that goes just how associate head coach Beth Burns is just really just into the defense and just really is just hammered home her scheme in her 4 years on the staff. So really excited for just what she's been doing with the defense and just how it's like how she just coaches them to be so aggressive. And I think that really showed on the Wolfpack's final possession in the alley tip off on yesterday. So USC, like I said, is now 2-0 on the year and jumped 10 spots to number 8 in the AP poll, which I think was super exciting to see. And I think just that win against NC State shows that USC is back. USC hasn't gone anywhere and is able to play with the big dogs and the top teams in the country. And USC is going to get another one of those tests coming up this Saturday when the Trojans face number 2 South Carolina, who's also 2-0 at Crypto.com Arena on Saturday night at 6 p.m. on Fox for the Real SC Series. And I think it's a great opportunity for USC to have another big test, especially facing one of the premier programs in women's college basketball. And I'm really obviously excited for it, especially you always, have USC and South Carolina fans going, we're the SC. And they're going, no, we're the real SC. I mean, y'all know who it really is. Fight on. But it's going to be exciting to see it. I think it's just going to be a great match for both teams, especially with how just USC has just said, we haven't gone anywhere. And I think Lindsey Gottlieb, to her credit, was saying, oh, no one's going to replace Juju Watkins necessarily. It's just everyone else is going to step up. And I think that's very much what has happened. So it was really exciting. So it's just, I'm really excited for this matchup. But then the other storyline I'm excited for in this one is getting to see former USC assistant coach Wendell Farrow, who is now on South Carolina's staff under Don Staley. And obviously, Dale, he's a great guy. I just still remember, like, I went to a game and he thanked me once by bringing me a t-shirt. And obviously, you just miss his presence just on the sideline. You're going to miss his presence on the sideline, especially just because you could always see the passion in just how he coaches in games and just how the players just responded to him. And you could just tell how much he just genuinely cares. So obviously, it's definitely a loss that he left USC, but I don't blame him. He obviously made a career move that he thought was best for him. And I mean, he went to arguably one of the best programs in the country, not trying to knock against USC, but just you look at what Dawn Staley's done. She's won 3 national titles, and they've just been much better in recent years since she's built up that program. So I don't blame Dill at all for going to South Carolina, but do miss him at all, and I'm excited to see him this weekend. So that'll be the game. And I'll be at that one, especially to see like this really great matchup in this Real SC series. So excited to see the Trojans take on the Gamecocks. We now move to the number 17 ranked women's volleyball team, who continues to stay hot and has turned their 6 and is now on an 8-match winning streak. Added 2 wins to it. They beat Northwestern at home 3-1, 22-25, 25-21, 25-16, 25-23 on Thursday. London Weejay led with 22 kills. Weejay had 2 aces. Leah Ford had 5 blocks. Reese Messer had 49 assists. And Taylor Deckard had 23 digs. Northwestern won the first set. While USC did have 14 missed serves across the match, they were able to overcome it in the final 3 sets. Then the Trojans went up to Seattle and got a 3-1 win over Washington, 21-25, 25-20, 25-20 for that second set, pardon me. 25-19, 25-16. That was yesterday. Weejay again led with 15 kills. Ford and Abigail Mullen had one ace each. Ford and Mullen also led with 5 blocks each. Messer had 49 assists, and Mullen had led the team with a career high 17 digs. So UW started strong, but then USC wore them down to get the win. Especially you saw it with the Huskies got that first step, then the Trojans then flipped it, won pretty much by 5. Huskies won the first by 4, and then just won the next third set by 6, and then kind of just blew them out in the fourth set. So because of just how she played, Abigail Mullen was named the Big Ten Freshman of the Week. So happy for her. USC now 19-5 overall. So yeah, they're 19-5 overall. Still stayed at number 17 in the country despite the wins. Kind of just with how it shaked out, it didn't really seem like there was much movement in the poll this week. The Trojans now have a 10-4 conference record, and they're tied for, I think, third or fourth overall in conference play. So they're really like kind of right in it. Obviously, I mean, they've had 4 losses, a couple of those maybe. Oh, they're tied for fourth, pardon me. Yeah, they're kind of right there. I mean, obviously, it's a lot. There's kind of a few teams in front of them. They're tied with Indiana, who they lost to, and then Wisconsin and Purdue are both ahead of them, as well as Nebraska. But just shows USC can compete with the top of the conference. And I think they've really taken that next step to just prove they can beat those ranked teams. Obviously, didn't face them this week, but when you look at the schedule they got coming up this week, some big games. So on Friday, they'll face Rutgers, who's 11-15 overall, 2-12 in Big Ten play. That'll be on Friday at 7 p.m. on Big Ten Plus. And then the big game, probably the biggest game in recent years for USC, number 1 Nebraska comes to USC. They are Cornhuskers are 24-0 overall, 14-0 in Big Ten play. That'll be at Sunday at 12 p.m. on Big Ten Plus, and Galen Center will be sold out. So this could be the biggest crowd in USC history. I think you can find tickets on SeatGeek. I think it's I checked it yesterday, and I think it was going for about, maybe find one for $124. So if you're trying to go, good luck finding tickets. But just shows that I think USC's playing really good opponents, and just really I think it's super exciting to see an opponent like this come to Galen Center. Obviously, a lot of those fans are going to be Cornhusker fans. They travel really well for volleyball. I mean, they sold out their football stadium for a game a couple years back. So I think it's going to be an exciting game. But USC does need to take care of Rutgers first before facing Nebraska, who I think has been super impressive this year, and despite John Cook's retirement and Danny Busboom Kelly, a Husker alum, coming and taking over the program after a successful run at Louisville. She's really kept the roster intact and playing well. They're number 1, undefeated. Then plus the interesting storyline too is obviously, will Ali Batenhorst, former USC and Nebraska alum, be at this game? So obviously hoping to see her there, but it's definitely interesting to see who she cheers for in that one. Come on, Ali. Fight on. Had to say that. So that's pretty much what's come up for women's volleyball. So super excited for that Nebraska game. So we'll move on to soccer, whose season is officially over. I watched before signing on and recording today. I did watch the selection show just to confirm what I already suspected, and unfortunately the Trojans did not make the field of 64 and will not be playing for a Big Ten for a national championship this year. Wasn't surprised, especially considering the way the season went, but still definitely do want to congratulate the 3 players who did win Big Ten awards. So Maribel Flores, who was the Big Ten Midfielder of the Year and an All Big Ten first team selection. Jan Anderson, who made the All Big Ten third team, and Bella Grust, who won the Sportsmanship Award. So just hopefully next year goes better, but definitely still just really congrats to all 3 of them on their conference accomplishments. Men's water polo is likely to stay at number 1 after getting a win against UC Santa Barbara on Saturday and move to 18-2 overall. while still holding a 4-1 MPSF record. So they won against the number 10 Gauchos 22 to 13 with Robert Lopez Duarte and Jack Vort leading the way with 3 goals each. And Charles Mills, I thought, had a really impressive game in the cage in the first half. He had 7 goals and then started played into the third quarter before Bernardo Herzer came in to take over, and then later Nemo Pavogi. So yes, he just started strong and then never looked back. Especially just Vort, playing really well, I thought, as well as Lopez Duarte, but then also just Mills. Like I thought he had a really great game. Definitely happy for him as well. And then so USC just has 1 game left in the regular season. It'll be against number 2 UCLA, who is 21-1 on the year and 4-1 in MPSF play. You can watch that. They'll be Saturday at 11 a.m. on overnight.com. Definitely a tough time to put it, regardless on Saturday, especially with the football game about an hour and a half after. And obviously, fans are going to be tailgating and want to get to the stadium in time to watch the band perform. And this game is huge because there's an MPSF title and the conference tournament number 1 seed on the line this game. So USC needs to play well, but does have the home, hopefully should have a bit of a home pool advantage. Obviously, like I said, is tricky, but they did try to bump it up a couple hours to get people to come. So we'll see what happens there. So men's golf, just to talk about them before we really, in the fall, they're currently 24th in the final fall season rankings. So hopefully, so congrats to them and excited to see them in the spring. Then women's is finished number 2 in the final fall rankings with Jasmine Kuhn number 9 in individual rankings and Catherine Park clocking in at number 14. So then we'll move to swim and dive, who saw its men's team lose 182 to 118 to Arizona on Friday, and then lost 197 to 103 against Arizona State the day after. Women, though, won at Arizona 189 to 109, and then won at ASU 169 to 131. So definitely, so the women's team is now 4-1, and the men's team is 1-3. It's a good weekend overall for the women. Tough one for the men. Definitely some highlights regardless. And then up next for swimming is the Texas Hall of Fame Invitational in Austin. That'll run from November 19th through 21st, and the Trojan Diving Invitational at Watang Zoo from November 20th through 22nd. So wishing them the best of luck in that. We'll talk about it more next week. Men's tennis, I believe said player, unclear, had on their social media schedule they posted on social media that they were taking part in the ITA Masters Championship in San Diego and the ITA Sectional Championships in Malibu. Both those dates were from November 6th through 9th. It was unclear if players went since like the USC's website did take a bunch of their events off the calendar. So up next, according to their social media graphic, is the NCAA Individual Championships in Orlando from November 17th through 23rd. I'll bring more info as it comes in. Women's tennis took part in the ITA, also had those same events, the ITA Masters Championship in San Diego, which was attended by Eugenia Zozava for singles, and then the ITA Sectional Championships in Seattle on those same dates with Krisha Mahendran and Jenna Hassam attending for doubles, and the Mahendran and Imi Haddad also attending for singles. And from their events this weekend, Zozava made it to the NCAA Individual Championships for singles, and Hassam and Mahendran are in for doubles, with Mahendran also in for singles. So those will be up. Their final event of the individual season will be the Individual Championships in Orlando. That'll be from November 18th through 23rd, and I'll talk more about it next week as info comes out. Cross country has their NCAA West Regionals on Friday. On Friday, they'll be at 9 a.m. in Sacramento, so I'll report on the results next week and if they advance on to the championships. And then baseball started their Cardinal and Gold World Series on Sunday. Gold team won game 1 6-3, and game 2 will take place on Friday. Men's volleyball looks to host their second tournament of the year, second USC fall tournament. And I believe Vanguard and UC San Diego will be coming to Galen Center for it. I'll report on results and information that comes out next week. So beach volleyball sent two pairs to the AVCA pairs tournament in Huntsville, Alabama that ran from Friday through Sunday, with Ashley Pater and Kennedy Coakley finishing fifth, and Kira Zangle and Quincy Stevens finishing 21st. So congrats to both of them. And then the final event of the fall season for beach volleyball will be the BVNE event in Santa Monica. So that'll run from that'll run Saturday and Sunday. So talk about the results from that next week. So that's going to conclude all the teams. Did not get any questions, but if you do want to ask me a question, I do post question boxes on both my Instagram and X, so follow me there so you can ask. Take any questions regarding USC athletics here on Behind the Caution Tape. So last week had a really good week. Went 5-0 in the games I attended. So the two men's basketball wins, the two football, women's volleyball, and men's water polo as well were also all wins. So it puts me at 23-5-1 on the school year, and 3 this year, and 334, 124-1 all time. So I'm now 2-0 at men's water polo, 5-1 at football, 12-3 at women's volleyball, and 2-0 in men's basketball. So my plans for this week, I'll be at the men's basketball game at Intuit Dome on Friday. I'll be at both the football game and the women's basketball game, football game against Iowa, and then immediately heading straight to Crypto.com Arena to catch the women's basketball team in action against South Carolina. Then the following day, I think most likely I should make the women's volleyball game against Nebraska. Just I do have Voice of College Football at 5, so probably got to be leaving Galen Center by 3 if it runs later. I don't think it should, so I don't think it's going to be a problem, but am preparing just in case it does become a reality, but should make it, I think, as it stands right now. So that's going to do it for us here behind the caution tape. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen or watch. Be sure to also follow me on social media at CrashLit. Whenever I'm not certain if I'll be at something or if anything changes, the best way you can figure out what games I'll be at each week is if I put on my Instagram story the game day graphic that the official team account for USC team account puts out depending on the event. So if I post that one the day of, that confirms I'll be there. So that's gonna do it for us here on Behind the Caution Tape. Thanks again for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing y'all next week, and fight on.